In this episode, I take you through troubleshooting some of the wiring problems I was having trying to get the truck running. So before I jump too far ahead of myself, I want to document the changing of some of the electrical cables. So I started off with this. Not very good at passing electricity. So we went down to O'Reilly's and picked up some brand new 1 gauge and some new battery clamps, and pay no attention to the fact that this is black and this is red, because this is positive and that's negative. Much better. And then down here, so I have very weak spark, and I wanted to better document changing out some of these cables. Let me give you a good example of where it's worn out. So I've gone around and I've labeled with some painter's tape each of the purpose of each of the different wires. And let's see if we can get you down in here. You can see just how rubbed bare some of these wires are. Now I have some on order that are cloth wrapped. But in the meantime, again, I ran back to O'Reilly's and picked up some proper gauge wire and some ends that we are going to replace some of these temporarily, so I can see if I can get it started. Trying to see this. Alright, now that I got that wire off, and according to the wiring diagram, 1432, 1432, I got this from Max Auto. So this is the same length and gauge. And it is cloth wrapped. So we'll put this one on and start stepping through each of the wires independently. Since we have, for instance, the labeling, the gauge, and the colors, we should be able to replace each of the wires with the appropriate gauge and maybe the appropriate color temporarily until I get the rest of my cloth wrapped wires shipped to me. These are custom made by one manufacturer in the United States for everybody, and then so they're custom ordered no matter who you end up ordering through, and sometimes some of them take a while, weeks to get to you. So one of the tricks that Derek at Vice Grip Garage showed is that you can check to see if your coil is in good health by checking resistance. And so one of the things that he shows is that if you go to ohms, let's see if we can do this, and check the resistance one-handed. Nope, drop it, drop it. Okay, yeah, that's what he does. He does, yeah. Okay. If I can get them to stay. And so I have 1.1 and a half ohms, roughly, somewhere in there. I'm not getting them to stick really good. Now watch. Mine will auto range. Now you can see, get that out of the sunlight and get it to stick. 6,000 ohms. See the K? There. 6,000 ohms. So we know that 1.5 translates into 6,000. So we know that the coil is good. So the next step I took is I highlighted the top of the coil's positive and negative sides. I like to use Sharpie's oil-based paint markers for anything you do in a car engine. And I've also started wiring the ignition to coil wire. And this one's supposed to be red with a green tracer. And so I have a green wire, and I put a little red on the end to help me remember that. And I also am flagging all of my wires according to the diagram that I have. Oh, it says ignition, coil to ignition, 16, red with green tracer. So I still haven't been able to get this to run. Even after rebuilding the carburetor, I honestly believe I have some sort of major electrical problem, whether it's always grounded or never making a ground connection. And instead of trying to troubleshoot each piece along the way, because I don't know what piece is wrong, I'm actually going to put in some modern electronics and step my way back from there, just kind of backwards. By putting in the modern electronics, I'm hoping to be able to remove any marginal or iffy nature of how points and the coil and the condenser all interact with each other. So I wanted you to see it before I began. So I have eliminated the original wire that was here. Here it is up here. The coil ignition switch, which is a number 16 in the American wire gauge. And originally would have been red with a green stripe. This weird clear plastic coating, I think, is something a lot more modern than that. Plus it's rigid. So like I said, I eliminated that. I have ignition to coil, again, a number 16, and it's supposed to be red with a green tracer. And if I remember, this is it is positive ground. And so I have highlighted the coil with some white paint to show that it is the negative side and the positive side for the ground. So I have my voltage coming in, and I'm going to go over here and touch the battery. And you can see that I have 6 volts. So then I come down here and I touch the positive side of the coil, and I get 573. Now, that's not so alarming. The coil by itself is going to have a tremendous amount of resistance. So I know that I'm wired properly. But I can't seem to ever get a spark to come out of the center of the coil. I've tried grounding it. I've tried using spark plugs. So I want to eliminate some of that uncertainty. And by doing that, I don't know if it's the wires. I don't know if it's the coil. I don't know if I'm not making connections. I don't know if my points are not consistent. I've sanded them. I've opened and closed them, and the condenser is just for backfeed. I replaced this wire with a remanufactured wire, so it's cloth wrapped, because the original wire was completely frayed. But again, like I said, I can't get this to be consistent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a Pertronix electronic ignition. And so what it does, instead of having your points rubbing on the wheel to be able to open and close, what it's going to do is use a Hall effect sensor to be able to fire the ignition. And so we're going to step through this, point that in, put new wires, see if this makes a difference. And if so, then I can step back and say, is it this part? Is it that part? In trying to diagnose this. So what we need to do in order to be able to put all the parts in is we have to remove a lot of parts. In fact, we have to remove, I have removed the vacuum advance in troubleshooting this, and also in order to diagnose whether my vacuum advance was fully functional or not. That'll come later. We don't need the vacuum advance in order to do this basic test. The vacuum advance is just supposed to be able to, at very low RPM, therefore high vacuum, pull and advance the spark. So let's get in here and take these out. I need a different screwdriver. And we're back. Let's try a bigger screwdriver. There we go. Oh, okay, let's unhook that first. So in all my troubleshooting, I have created my own disconnect. So it just disconnects the coil wire so that if I ever got this running and had no way to make it stop, if you disconnect the coil wire, there would be no electricity to be able to be passed through and the engine would stop. And if you have a extension magnet, which I can't remember where I put mine, or just a magnetic screwdriver, it will really help you be able to get these tiny screws out from areas that you can't reach, like this. Just like that. Mostly due to the very large fat fender on these trucks makes it difficult to be able to get your hands over and then into the engine. That's number 2. I had also found that one of the cloth wires here had been rubbing at some point and had frayed, and so I wrapped a little bit of this white electrical tape around it. I use this white electrical tape because I have a couple of spools of colorful electrical tape, but they're a thinner spool rather than your conventional width of electrical tape. And so it was easier for me to get my fingers in there to be able to manipulate a small piece of white electrical tape. There we go. So I had previously sanded these and checked that they made contact and opened and were consistent, and I had adjusted the gap, and I really believe that there's something else much more major going on here. Either it's always grounded in some way, whether it's this frayed wire or other wires, or it is the coil itself never producing the spark that I need, well, the higher voltage to induce the spark. There is also this clip that is wrapped around, and it helps give a little bit of spring in order to help hold on the rotor on the top of it. So you need to remove this. Now the condenser, I can't really see, it has a screw way on the bottom here, and the condenser is to condense or resist the back pressure, the back feed, the sparking of the grounding of the arc of the electricity, so that you don't get that electrical hum on your radio or other electronics. And that's why it appears, if you look at it, like, how does this thing work? It only has one wire coming out of it. Well, it's actually grounded. The exterior of it, the metal casing of it, is grounded here to the entire distributor. And so the arcing of the spark, as that happens, it gets, let's get the, here we go. I don't know how well this is going to come out. The camera is now upside down. There we go. Hanging from one of the fan blades because it's magnetic. So now we can take the condenser out, adjust it. Now this is one of, this is an action cam, so it's not made for close up. So chances are this is actually wire under here going to be out of focus. Is the last one we have to remove, and this one actually goes completely through and connects to this wire. Might not be able to get to it from this side. I can't get any torque on there. Could try opening the window here. I don't know if this will go. No, that's not going to help us. My understanding is that I have to take it off from the bottom. So let's look into that. Alright, so we're going to try a couple different sizes. I can't remember what size this was. We're going to try 3/8. Alright, let's try that. Oh, it is moving. Yep. So it's 3/8 for those playing along at home. When I'm leaning over the fender here, I can just ever so barely see the edge of the nut that I'm trying to align. There we go. I got my fingers on it now. Okay. And I think from some of the pictures that I saw, there's a washer. Nope, I just dropped it. And it's gone. Alright, we'll have to get that later. I think there's another nut there. This one I'm just going to have to feel for because I can't see this one at all. Yep, I can feel that. There we go. Yep, okay, I'm able to get that one loose now too. So the reason why you have to take this one off is this is where we're going to feed the wires from the kit. Alright, so let's move up to the top now that we can move this and get better shot now. And we're back up top. And I wanted to show, this is what we were working on right here. And so now it is a post we can grab with our long needle nose and be able to pull the post out. And the post has a rectangular head with some rounded ends on it in order to help it sit properly and be able to be torqued down here. There we go. You can see how the head, there we go, how the head fits into the slot and cannot be turned once it's in the slot. And it's cloth wrapped, it's probably original, and there's a little bit of, there we go, some of it being exposed. I'll have to look in to see if I can get a replacement for this, because I would like to eventually put the entire truck back to points. So I'm going to show the placement first. And there are some nubs here that used to help hold the condenser in place, and we are actually going to use those in order to key the exact offset equally all the way around here. And so you can see that I've put it into the middle hole. You could bring it in, you could put it out. Actually, maybe it is supposed to be in better. Yeah, that looks like it sits better now. Okay, that makes more sense. So the reason why there's 3 holes, each of the outer holes will go onto each of the nubs that used to hold the condenser, and the center hole will hold the screw. And then up here is your other hole, which will hold the other screw and that ground wire. And so we should put that on top so that we can see it. And that's where it enters this cutout so that it doesn't rub. But I think where we should start is putting in the rubber grommet into the hole. Because the key is, this is going to have to get squished. I think the problem is that the wires are creating or preventing it from being squished. I found a set of my older, smaller needle nose, and I wonder if I can get in the side here a little bit better. pull out the retainer completely. Alright, so let's try this again. If I rotate it where I can pull that better. I feel like it's about halfway through. I can definitely get my fingers on it now, which is helping me get the needle nose on it better. But I also think that the silicone is not helping now. It's now to the point where it's slippery. There, can you see that? There's a little bit of, it's poking through now. Oh, that does it. That kind of helps a little bit. I'm squeezing with a needle nose to try and get that lip through. Yep, that's working. So I'm squeezing with the needle nose to be able to get, let's see if I can change this light. It's even impossible for me to see because it's so dark in there. Like, I wonder if what I really need is, I'm trying not to lose it or my light. So if I put the light, how do I get it to sit like right there? Try something like that. So what I'm trying to do is squish the sides of the grommet and use the tip of the needle nose to feed it into the hole. Almost. There we go. I think that's in. Alright, so now we need to feed each of the wires through. I almost wonder if I'm going to need some sort of a fish to be able to pull these through, something more rigid than the wire itself. I could try. That one seems to be going okay, but I'm sure the next one will be a pain in the ass. Let's give it just a little bit of assistance. That helped. That got the wire through. So let's try the second one. My hands are all greasy from the back side of that, and I don't want to get the grease on the wires because then the tape won't stick. This is a pain in the ass. I think I got it. I think the problem is that either it's silicone or the coatings on the wires themselves are slippery. And so I don't know. I wonder if my only option is the tape itself being sticky enough. I also don't want to make it too thick because then it'll never get through. I'm already getting grease all over this tape. So the idea there is that if I can narrow it down, hopefully this will slip through. All right, let's try that. Here we go. I was worried it was going to get too thick. I can't seem to get past that thick part there on the tape. The rest of it seems to have worked. I got it. It's going in. But I need to pull back just a little bit because the entire grommet is starting to be pulled through. I really need light over here to see better. And I'm hoping once we get past the tape, it will release better. I'm almost there. There. That did it. Now, I don't have any brake cleaner, carb cleaner. I'm all out. What I do have is some mass airflow cleaner. Well, that sounds pretty good. It's designed for electrical stuff. Evaporates in seconds. Also, proven gain in 4 to 10 horsepower at the wheels. That's not spraying very well. That's better. So let's go into the bottom first. I'm using the magnetic head again. I'm just going to get it started. All right. And then this one, I also love how the labeling 1283P6 and also the stamping P6 1283. So even if you lost your sticker someday, you could see that the stamping said that it was positive 6 volts for positive ground system. Does it advance? Yep, no problems. So you see what I meant, how it advances, it adds slack. So I think if I bring it all the way back and make it tight, that'll help keep the wires from having issues. So let's pull the bottom wire first. Sorry about that. The battery on the camera died, so I plugged it in now, and right at the end of that video I was able to make the wires even, like I said, as I pulled them in. So when it advances, it gives us just a little bit of slack, and I'm hoping that will be okay. I don't want it to be too tight. All right, so then I'm not sure, because this part is circular. Oh, I see. So each of the veins, oh yeah, look at that. There is an ever so slight arc to each of these veins, which will sit on the arc in between there. So let's see if I can get that to line up just right. At each of the peaks, one of the peaks will be in the middle of the vein and the other peak will be in the gap. And that is how it centers itself. So it actually uses nothing in the middle. So I'm going to put the clip back on. Alright, so that's on the top. So now let's put pressure here and pull down on the bottom. Okay. Okay. And so what it does is it provides just a little bit of spring right here, and that puts a little bit of pressure in order to kind of keep this in place a little bit better. Now I'm going to leave these extra long for the moment. So now if the positive side is going to have to be to ground, as per the instructions, I'm going to have to put it onto the body somewhere. And I'm going to double check the wire thickness here. I'm pretty sure these are 14s. Yeah, that's a nice clean strip. You can see that, probably can't see, that this is the braid. You can see the braid underneath. So these are 14s. All right, so let's get the first one on here. And you want to be able to push it all the way through. And I like to see just a little bit coming out the end. And I like to twist as I put it in. Let's see, that's a little too long, but we'll live with it. And I like to squish down onto the flat part, not side to side. So it says the ignition switch wire is the black wire. The ignition switch wire is red with a green stripe. So let's do red and green on the black wire. So then that means these two need to be able to talk to each other but be separate. So this has to come off. And my solid black, which now I've marked red with green, and my ignition wire have to come together. And so what I have temporary is this bolt, and then I need to wrap this to prevent it from touching anything. Okay, so there's some of my finest work. I have wrapped that up in some yellow electrical tape. Next step is the other wire needs to go to the negative side of the coil. Okay, and now I need to make the positive side end up somewhere grounded. So there is a screw bolt threaded that pinches the coil and holds it in place. Let's see if that fits over there. And it does. So now I just need a nut for that. Just like brushing your teeth. Circles, making circles, making circles. It's also right next to the battery ground to the engine block. Now we're not torquing for spec, we're just trying to keep it tight. Alright. Can I wrap it around here? Yeah, that'll work. Okay. I need, this is confusing. I need to be able to keep the wires separate and the ignition wire separate, and now I've tangled that. Here we go. Let me bump it around to TDC. Should be very close. Okay, so now let me get the other camera and show you what I'm looking at. There. you can see where I've put yellow paint on the dot that is on the pulley. I might not even have the right words. And the pointer are almost lined up. They are just within a hair of each other. So that is top dead center. And so in calling that top dead center, this should be pointing to number 1, to the number 1 spark plug. And the number 1 spark plug is supposed to be straight down. And that is my short lead. This one comes up here. Put this one back in. And this, yeah, so that's not right. Unless, yeah, that is right. Okay. So there is this tiny little indent in the cap, and that aligns in only one spot. And you can't quite see it. Let me see. Where's my other light? And that indent is right here in the cap. So that is where, that's how you align the cap. And so we have to be able to align number 1 spark plug, top dead center, to that point on the cap. So if I take this indent, line it to that part of the cap, what you can do is, as you're pressing down on it, you can rotate it, and you'll feel it slip into that part of the cap. It should be right about there, but I'm not feeling it slip into the hole. There. It ever so suddenly gave, and then now you are rotating the entire assembly. So this pinch point back in here, and I'm going to try and find it with my fingers, and then I believe that is a 1/2 inch bolt. Now my intention is to get it finger tight, which is like that, and still be able to rotate ever so slightly, so that hopefully we can get top dead center and get it to start. Now I noticed that this is pinched a little bit, so I pulled the boot back to make sure that I can get it fully seated, and then put the boot back on it. And so what I'd like to do is use my number 1 spark plug, and I'm going to get a brand new spark plug. And we're going to see if we can get spark out of that spark plug. All right. So I went to Max Auto Parts, which is part of Eckler's, and got the Motorcraft, probably it's all washed out probably, the Motorcraft spark plug 473A, which they list as being used in the flathead engines, whether it was 6s or 8s. Another very common one that is used is the 216 Autolite. So I'll show you from the number 1. Great. That's out. Hopefully this takes it out. I don't know if the battery's charged. There we go. Okay. So like I was saying, the 216 Autolite is what was in the engine when I got it. There's also a box of Champions, but Autolite was usually used in Fords. I'd much rather have a Motorcraft, Motorcraft being Ford. The spark plug itself says AL7CA. So what we're going to do is we are going to start with the coil itself. And what I want to see is, I'm gonna have to crimp that a little bit. What I want to see is that the Hall effect sensor and the magnets and the rotation is able to signal the coil to fire. Yeah. Let's try that. Yeah, so that feels a much tighter connection. And we'll put our boot on top of it. Okay. And then this end is the spark plug, and that has to crimp. Oh, it has a much better connection. Yeah, let's try that. Oh yeah, I like that a lot better. This, I'm coming right out of the top of the coil, and I'm grounding the plug itself, because that's what the plug does when you screw it into the block. The threads end up being the ground. So now if I bump it around, yes, I saw a spark. I saw another spark. I saw another spark. So let's go. Lots of spark. Okay, so we know that the new sensor is working. We know that the coil is working. So can I get it to come out on the number 1 with every rotation? So let's check that. Now I should have a spark form only once every 8 instead of all the time. Okay, all right. So we'll put this back in the hole. Get that on there. There. And then boot, all right. Hair. Yeah, like that. And what we'll do is we'll end up playing with the rotation of the cap by just a little bit to see if I can get it to fire just right. But I need fuel first, so let me get that hooked up.